I have lots of quilts made by my mom and grandma, but I've never really worked with fabric, so I thought maybe I could try making a quilt with wood. Step 1 was finding a design I liked. After looking through some classic quilt patterns, I settled on this sawtooth star. A bit of plotting, and I came up with this. A 24 by 24 inch square made of 9 blocks. It'll use 1/4 inch thick maple, walnut, cherry, and several assorted exotics. All in all, 220 individual pieces to cut, so I better get to work. The design is on a 1.5 inch grid, and every shape is 1.5 inches in some dimension, so I'll begin by ripping my boards to that width. With 220 pieces to fit together, precision and consistency are very important in this project. Small discrepancies will quickly add up and throw things off. So before each table saw operation, I'm running test scraps through first to ensure everything is right where it should be. There are 4 exotic species making an appearance in this quilt: canarywood, black limba, mahogany, and leopardwood. A bit of a splurge, but they should look pretty cool in the pattern. Once I have my pile of strips, I can start cutting them to their final size. I'll start with the 6-inch long rectangles of walnut and cherry. I need 12 of each. To aid in this marathon, I've made a sled specifically for this project. It's basically a normal crosscut sled, but it has small fences to make 90 and 45-degree cuts. Next, I need 16 squares of maple, 18 walnut, and 54 total of the exotics. Same as before, I'll check my setup with scraps until it's as perfect as I can possibly get it. To prevent the cutoff piece from potentially binding between the blade and stop block, I've clamped on a guide that I put the stop block against, push my workpiece to the stop block, then remove it for the cut. When I get down to the small ends, some double-sided tape holds things in place. There are 2 sizes of triangle in this design, which I'll call small and large. The 36 large triangles will be a mix of the exotic species, made by cutting at 45 degrees, flipping the piece, and repeating. I don't have a stop set up for this, I'm just visually aligning the point with the edge of the kerf in the sled. The small triangles are all maple. I need 72 of those, which are made with alternating 45 and 90-degree cuts. And there's the pile. Everything will be glued to a 1/2 inch plywood base. First, I'll cut it down to a little over 24 by 24 inches using a jigsaw. It'll be precisely trimmed down at the end after everything is glued on. Plywood is more stable than a solid wood panel, which might warp over time, so it's a good choice for something like this. Okay, that's about it for the base for now. Then I can start laying things out. I tried a few different arrangements for the exotics, such as having only 1 species per block or mixing them up. I settled on mixing them up. Then I laid everything out and got the exotic woods looking random, but balanced across the whole thing. Now for the glue up. I guess I didn't press record before starting, but to summarize, things went wrong very fast, and I had to quickly pry up a lot of pieces before the glue dried. What I came to realize was that my 72 small triangles were just a hair too big, and that was immediately throwing everything out of whack. So I decided to glue down the main grid structure first. Once that was established, I glued down everything but the triangles. From there, I could see what did and didn't fit. There were only a few of the large triangles that were too big, so I sanded them down until they fit. Any glue squeeze out also needs to be removed so it doesn't interfere with other pieces. Well, that's enough for one day. I'll deal with the dozens of little triangles tomorrow. Alright, each of these little things just needs a tiny bit sanded off. Before all that, I marked each one to make sure it would be positioned with the grain radiating out from the center of the block. I only messed up one, but I'm sure no one will notice. One of the more tedious tasks, but it all came together in the end. There are lots of little gaps all over the place, but I'm planning on being able to fix that later. Not all the wood was exactly a 1/4 inch thick, so now I will get it somewhat leveled out with 80 grit sandpaper. Once it's reasonably flat, I'll rub some glue into all the seams, then go over it with 120 grit. The vacuum is off, so this should be forcing wood dust into the glue-filled crevices. It's not perfect, of course, but I'd say it's still pretty darn good, especially when you compare a non-filled area to a filled one. Then more sanding, up to 220. A flashlight beam reveals spots that need another round of glue and dust filling, plus small divots and scratches to sand out. To cover the edges and give it sort of a framed look, I have some leftover mahogany that I'll cut into thin strips. The boards are 24 inches long, so I need to trim down the quilt to be 23.5 inches. I'm doing this in increments by cutting 2 adjacent sides, moving the fence closer, then cutting the other 2 sides. This does slightly throw off the geometry of the maple squares around the outside, but what's a fella to do? Next, I can glue 2 mahogany strips onto opposite sides. When they're dry, I'll use a flush trim bit in the router to bring them down even with the quilt surface. Then the other 2 sides get glued on and trimmed down as well. Now a final sanding all around, which includes softening the edges of the mahogany border. After an inspection to make sure everything looks good, it's time for a finish. I'm wiping on a tung oil finish. It's awesome to see all the wood species come to life just like that. Let it soak in, wipe off the excess, and repeat. I ended up doing 3 coats with a day in between each one. Finally, some hanging hardware on the back. The rings are attached about 1/3 of the way down from the top. Then I'll tie on the wire, leaving enough slack so that it can be pulled to a little below the top edge. And some rubber pads to protect the wall. And this quilt is done. It wasn't quite the simple puzzle piece assembly I envisioned, but I'm happy with how it all turned out. The mix of wood species really does capture the quilt effect in a satisfying way. Out of the 220 pieces, there are 3 where the grain is not going the direction I meant for it to go. But you know what? That's fine. This was a rewarding project, and there are endless possibilities for different patterns to make in the future. Thanks for watching.